There is a moment in the life of every empathic woman when silence becomes louder than noise. After years of absorbing others' emotions, giving more than she receives, and carrying invisible burdens, something begins to shift. She doesn't break, she awakens. The healing journey is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the self she buried under layers of people-pleasing, guilt, and survival. When she begins to remember who she is beneath the projections, something sacred is reborn. Her empathy, once a source of exhaustion, transforms into a compass of inner power. This video is a path into that transformation, not just a healing, but an evolution. A woman who reclaims her essence becomes a force that cannot be defined. She becomes something greater. If this message resonates with you, leave a comment below saying, "My healing is my power." Carl Jung's psychological framework offers profound insight into the transformation of the empathic woman. At the core of his philosophy lies the concept of individuation, the process through which a person integrates the unconscious into conscious awareness, becoming whole. For the empathic woman, healing begins when she stops identifying solely with the persona, the adaptive mask she's worn to survive emotional overload. Often, this persona has been shaped by projections. Others see her as the nurturer, the listener, the one who can endure everything. Over time, she starts to believe that this role defines her. Through Jung's lens, healing invites her to confront the shadow, the parts of herself she's denied in order to maintain harmony. Her anger, boundaries, ambition, and even desires for solitude may have been repressed. As she integrates these disowned aspects, she doesn't lose her empathy. She anchors it in strength. The empathic energy becomes discerning. No longer a sponge, she becomes a mirror. No longer rescuing others at the cost of herself, she becomes sovereign. Jung also spoke of the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine energies within the psyche. In healing, the empathic woman activates her inner masculine, structure, assertiveness, and clarity. This balances her natural receptivity and intuition. She no longer floats in others' emotions, she stands rooted in her own. Healing through Jungian integration does not harden her, it refines her. She becomes a woman who feels deeply without drowning. A woman whose compassion no longer depletes her but empowers her. She embodies both softness and steel, not because she changed who she was, but because she remembered all she is. There is a quiet unraveling that begins when the empathic woman realizes that her kindness has become a prison. For years, she has been the peacekeeper, the one who absorbs tension in the room, the one who anticipates others' needs before her own even arise. She's been praised for her compassion, her patience, her selflessness, and she has internalized this praise as her identity. Yet, beneath it all, there is a gnawing fatigue that can no longer be ignored. A dissonance between who she appears to be and who she truly is begins to stir. The collapse does not happen all at once. It starts in subtle moments when she says yes, but means no, and feels the sting of self-betrayal. When she comforts someone who has wounded her, and something inside her silently protests. When she finds herself exhausted after giving so much and no one notices her depletion. These moments accumulate like pressure under the surface, and eventually the mask she has worn begins to crack. This is the beginning of self-awareness, a dangerous and holy moment. She starts to ask, what if my empathy is not always a virtue? What if I have used it to avoid confrontation, to maintain control, to be needed? These questions are unsettling because they shake the foundation of her self-worth. If she is not the endlessly giving woman, who is she? The answer does not come immediately, but the asking itself is a sign of awakening. Jung's concept of the persona becomes deeply relevant here. The persona is the social mask we wear to adapt, to be accepted. The empathic identity is often a highly idealized persona, one that has been rewarded and reinforced since childhood. But it is not the whole self. As the woman begins to peel back this identity, she discovers how much of her true essence was sacrificed to uphold it. She sees how she has been performing care instead of embodying love, how she has been agreeable instead of authentic. This unraveling is painful, but it is not destruction. It is deconstruction, the necessary shedding of roles that no longer serve the soul. In Jungian terms, this marks the beginning of individuation. She is no longer content to be who the world wants her to be. She is compelled to become who she truly is. And this journey cannot begin until the false self begins to fall away. There is grief in this process. Grief for the years lost in self-erasure. Grief for the relationships that were built on one-sided giving. Grief for the self she abandoned to be loved. But beneath the grief, there is also relief. She begins to feel the stirrings of something new, the quiet pulse of her own voice, the whisper of her own needs, the flicker of a self not shaped by obligation. This is the first real empowerment she experiences. Not loud, not aggressive, but steady. She starts to notice when she is overextending. She begins to pause before rescuing. She starts asking herself, what do I want? What do I need? These questions feel foreign at first, almost selfish, but they are the roots of sovereignty. In this stage, she is raw, vulnerable, and uncertain, but she is also more alive than ever, because for the first time she is not living on autopilot. She is listening inward. The woman who once felt at the mercy of others' emotions now begins to feel the weight of her own energy, not as a burden, but as a source of truth. She no longer wants to be good. She wants to be whole. The collapse of the empathic identity is not a failure. It is a rite of passage. It is the portal through which the true self begins to emerge. She has outgrown the identity that once kept her safe, and as she lets it fall, she makes space for something greater, not a new persona, but an authentic, integrated self that can hold both empathy and boundaries, softness and strength. This is not the end of her empathy, it is the beginning of her power. Once the empathic woman begins shedding the identity built on pleasing others, she comes face to face with something she has spent most of her life avoiding, her own shadow. In Jungian terms, the shadow represents all the parts of the psyche that have been denied, suppressed, or rejected because they didn't fit the image she believed she had to maintain. For the empath, this shadow often includes emotions and impulses that conflict with her self-concept of being gentle, kind, and self-sacrificing, anger, assertiveness, desire for autonomy, even the wish to say no. Meeting the shadow is not comfortable. It is not clean or elegant. It is messy, raw, and often shocking. She begins to notice a rage inside her that she cannot explain, a rage that has been building in silence for years. It is the rage of being overlooked, of being used, of being expected to give endlessly while asking for nothing. This rage is not a flaw. It is sacred. It is the fire of her soul, pushing back against the lifelong silencing of her needs. It is the repressed voice of truth demanding to be heard. The empathic woman has long been conditioned to suppress this fire. Perhaps she was told that anger is unladylike, that being emotional makes her irrational, that her role is to keep the peace. So she learned to smile through the hurt, to internalize conflict, to abandon herself in order to maintain harmony. But now, as she heals, she realizes that this suppression has come at a great cost. Every time she said yes when she wanted to scream no, a part of her was buried. Every time she tolerated mistreatment to avoid making others uncomfortable, she betrayed her own soul. Now, the shadow surfaces, not to destroy her, but to free her. Jung taught that the shadow, once integrated, becomes a source of immense energy and creativity. What once felt like darkness now reveals itself as vitality. Her rage, once feared, becomes clarity. Her assertiveness, once hidden, becomes protection. Her desire to withdraw and protect her energy, once labeled as cold or distant, becomes an act of self-respect. As she allows these disowned parts of herself to come into the light, she begins to reclaim her voice. It starts trembling at first, a soft no, a refusal to engage in emotional labor that depletes her, a decision to walk away from relationships that demand her silence. Each act of self-assertion feels revolutionary. Each boundary drawn feels like an act of devotion to the self she once abandoned. And still, the world may not react kindly. Those who have benefited from her emotional availability may call her selfish. Those who once relied on her inability to say no may resist her newfound strength, but she no longer bends to guilt or shame, because she now understands that boundaries are not walls, they are the edges of her truth. They define where she ends and others begin. Meeting the shadow also brings surprising gifts. She discovers that the parts of herself she once disowned, her ambition, her desire to be alone, her need for space, are not selfish but sacred. They are essential components of her wholeness. She no longer needs to fragment herself to be accepted. She no longer chases approval from those who only loved the version of her that stayed small and agreeable. Through this integration, a quiet revolution takes place. She no longer fears confrontation. She speaks her truth, even when her voice shakes. She protects her energy as a sacred resource. She no longer apologizes for taking up space, for needing rest, for choosing herself. The empathic woman who meets her shadow is not becoming someone else. She is reclaiming what was hers all along. Her depth is now matched by her discernment. Her compassion is now grounded in self-respect. Her emotional attunement is no longer a liability but a strength, tempered by fierce inner boundaries. This is where transformation becomes visible. She begins to radiate a different energy, not one of self-abandonment masked as kindness, but of grounded presence. She becomes unshakable not because she hardens, but because she integrates. The woman who once feared her own darkness now walks with it at her side, not as a burden, but as a source of power. As the empathic woman integrates her shadow and reclaims her voice, she arrives at a threshold where healing must now move inward into balance. This is where she begins to awaken what Carl Jung called the animus, the inner masculine principle. While her empathy, intuition, and receptivity have long been dominant, they have often existed without a counterpart strong enough to contain and direct them. Her emotional world has been rich, but porous, without structure, without boundaries, without the assertive clarity needed to protect and empower her inner truth. To move forward, she must now build something she was never taught to value, a stable inner framework to hold her sensitivity. The inner masculine is not about becoming hard, cold, or detached. It is about developing inner qualities that allow her to move through the world with grounded clarity. The empathic woman without this inner structure can easily dissolve into others, taking on their emotions, their pain, even their desires, to the point of losing herself. The awakening of the animus begins when she realizes she no longer wants to be consumed by her own emotional depth or by the needs of others. She wants to hold her feelings, not drown in them. She wants to witness others without absorbing them. She wants her life to have direction, purpose, and boundaries. The animus gives form to feeling. It is the energy that says, "This is my truth, and I will protect it." It is the voice that makes decisions not based on guilt, but on alignment. It is the force that transforms emotional overwhelm into focus, that transforms compassion into wise action. Through this inner masculine, she learns to say no without apology, to prioritize her needs without shame, to step away from chaos without guilt. This awakening is deeply empowering because it marks the moment when she stops waiting to be rescued. All her life, she may have longed for someone, a partner, a mentor, a friend, to give her the strength, structure, and protection she lacked. But now she sees that what she was seeking outside must first be built within. She becomes her own container, her own guardian, her own guide. This inner shift ripples outward. She begins to restructure her relationships. She no longer invests in connections that are one-sided or emotionally manipulative. She is no longer drawn to people who only value her as a caretaker. Her standards rise. Her time becomes sacred. Her body, her energy, her home, all become spaces of intentional protection. She doesn't need to fight for peace. She creates it from within. The inner masculine also allows her to engage with the world differently. Where she once hesitated to take up space, to speak her truth, to pursue her goals, she now moves with steady confidence. She no longer questions her right to exist fully. Her emotional sensitivity, once uncontained, now becomes a superpower because it is grounded in inner discipline. She becomes more discerning with her time, her energy, and her attention. She no longer confuses sacrifice with love or silence with safety. This is not about abandoning her feminine qualities. It is about allowing them to flourish in harmony. Her inner feminine, the part of her that feels deeply, that creates, that receives, is now supported by the part of her that acts, decides, and protects. She can still be soft, but her softness is now held within a strong and defined container. She can still nurture, but she no longer does so at the cost of herself. She can still feel deeply, but she no longer bleeds for what isn't hers. Through the lens of Jungian psychology, this integration is essential for individuation. Without the inner masculine, the empathic woman risks remaining fragmented, powerful in feeling, but powerless in action. With it, she becomes whole. She no longer waits to be chosen. She chooses herself. She no longer asks for permission. She moves in alignment with her own truth. This is the woman who walks through the world not as a rescuer or a martyr, but as a sovereign being. She brings love, but not at the cost of self. She offers care, but only where it is received with respect. She builds a life that honors her soul, not her conditioning. And in doing so, she becomes the structure her younger self always needed, the clarity her emotions longed for, the strength her softness deserved. At the end of her descent into the self, through the collapse of the false identity, the confrontation with her shadow, and the awakening of her inner masculine, the empathic woman begins to enter a new phase: integration. This is not a moment of completion, but a profound shift in orientation. Where once she moved through life from a place of survival and adaptation, she now begins to live from wholeness. Her empathy, once her greatest vulnerability, becomes her most precise instrument. She is no longer ruled by the pain that shaped her. She becomes the woman who holds that pain with wisdom and walks forward, expanded by it, not defined by it. Integration in Jungian psychology means unifying the opposites within, not by suppressing one in favor of the other, but by allowing all parts of the self to coexist in conscious harmony. The empathic woman now contains both the one who once gave too much and the one who now protects her energy. She is both soft and strong, intuitive and rational, open and boundaried. These are no longer contradiction. They are her wholeness made visible. There is power in no longer needing to be only one thing. She no longer needs to prove her worth by being endlessly available. She no longer ties her identity to how much she can endure. She no longer confuses empathy with martyrdom. Instead, she chooses presence over performance, truth over harmony, and alignment over approval. Her empathy is no longer a bleeding wound. It is a conscious act of connection that begins with herself. She can still feel deeply, but now she chooses how and when to engage, guided not by guilt, but by inner clarity. This expansion is not loud. It is not a performance of strength. It is quiet, steady, and rooted. She becomes magnetic, not because she is trying to please, but because she is fully herself. Her presence carries weight, the weight of someone who has met her own depths and come back with treasures. There is a calm power in her that others feel without explanation. It's not in what she says, but in what she no longer needs to say. She no longer seeks to be understood by everyone, because she understands herself. She no longer seeks validation through being everything to everyone, because she knows that her value is not up for negotiation. She no longer fears being alone because she has become her own home. And from this place she gives, not to be needed, not to be liked, but because she chooses to. Her giving is no longer compulsive, it is sovereign. This is the woman who once felt too much and now feels just enough. The woman who once absorbed everyone's pain and now reflects it back with insight and groundedness. The woman who once sought to fix others and now holds space for them to fix themselves. She does not abandon her compassion, she refines it. She becomes discerning, wise, and precise in where she invests her care, and this precision is born not from hardness, but from the sacred journey of healing. In this integrated state, she becomes something greater than the wound that once shaped her identity. The pain that once consumed her has now become part of her medicine. She speaks not from unhealed trauma, but from embodied experience. Her life becomes a testimony, not to suffering, but to transformation. She teaches not by instructing, but by being. Her presence is her teaching. Jung believed that the individuation process is the path to becoming who you truly are, a return to the self that exists beyond conditioning, beyond trauma, beyond roles. The empathic woman who has walked this path becomes a living embodiment of that journey. She is no longer the empath who disappears into others. She is the woman who brings her empathy into the world as a conscious choice, rooted in self-respect. And she keeps expanding. Integration is not a final destination. It is a way of being. With each new challenge, each new relationship, each new layer of self that arises, she brings the same presence, the same integrity, the same deep knowing. I am whole, even as I continue to evolve. This is what happens when the empathic woman heals. She does not become someone else. She becomes more of who she truly is, And in doing so, she becomes something greater than she ever imagined, not because she has changed, but because she has remembered herself. When the empathic woman chooses to heal, she reclaims everything she once gave away in search of belonging. Through the ashes of overextension and silence, she rediscovers her voice, her boundaries, her strength. She integrates the pain, the love, the anger, and the insight, not to become perfect, but to become whole. She stops asking the world for permission to exist fully and begins to live from a place of deep inner authority. This journey is not about hardening or turning away from her sensitivity. It is about anchoring it in wisdom. Her empathy becomes a conscious tool, not an unconscious sacrifice. She no longer offers herself to be consumed. She offers her presence as a gift, one that honors herself first. In healing, she transcends the role she was told to play and steps into the truth of who she is. If this message spoke to something deep in you, subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready to keep expanding, click on the next video on the screen. Remember, your healing is not your ending. It is the doorway to something far greater.